Welcome. You're listening to the Veiled Narrator. You may need to step away from the noise, sit in silence, and listen to what was never meant to be spoken aloud.
I wish I could say I handled what I found in a rational way. That I contacted the city, that I called a contractor, that I sealed the room and walked away. But the truth is, once you've seen something that shouldn't exist inside your own home, your sense of normal doesn't snap back the way you expect it to. It stretches, it bends, and then it quietly rearranges itself around the impossible. The morning after I found the room, I called in sick to work. I didn't tell my boss why. I just said I wasn't feeling well, which wasn't exactly a lie. My hands were still shaking when I poured my coffee. I kept glancing down the hallway, half expecting to see the door open wider than it had been the night before. It hadn't moved. The door sat flush with the wall, perfectly disguised again, like it had always been there and I was the one who'd been blind. I stood there for a long time, coffee cooling in my mug, listening. Nothing. No tapping. No movement. The silence felt deliberate. Around mid-morning, I logged into the county records database. I told myself I was just going to verify something simple. Maybe there was a clerical error, an unrecorded renovation, something mundane that would make the last 12 hours make sense. The original permit from 1996 listed the house as 1,842 square feet. The current record listed it as the same. But my measurements didn't match that number. They never had. I pulled up the inspection notes from when I bought the house. Nothing unusual. No remarks. No flagged discrepancies. That bothered me more than the room itself. Because inspectors miss things all the time, but they don't miss entire rooms. I zoomed in on the scanned blueprint, tracing the layout with my cursor. Bedrooms, bathrooms, hallway, garage. And there it was. A blank space. Not labeled, not dimensioned. Just a gap between the guest bedroom and the bathroom wall. The space wasn't acknowledged, but it was there, like someone had erased it without fully closing the gap. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. That's when the knocking started again. Clearer than before. Not from the hallway, from behind my office wall. I didn't approach it this time. I sat perfectly still, listening. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. The same pattern. I waited for it to stop. It didn't. It went on for nearly 10 minutes before finally fading into silence. That afternoon, I decided to talk to someone. Not about the room, not yet, about the house. My neighbor, Doug, had lived next door since before I bought the place. Late 50s, retired, friendly in a way that felt practiced. I caught him outside watering his lawn. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "Quick question. You've been here a while, right?" He smiled. "Since '98. Do you remember anything strange about this house before I moved in?" He didn't answer immediately. That pause was brief but noticeable. "Strange how?" he asked. "Renovations, add-ons, anything like that." Doug squinted at my house, then shrugged. "Nope, same as it's always been. Young couple lived there before you. Quiet, kept to themselves." "Kids?" He shook his head. "No kids." That should have reassured me. Instead, it made my stomach tighten. That night, I opened the door again. I don't know why I expected it to look different. The tallies were still there. The drawing was still taped to the wall. But something had changed. There was a new tally mark. It hadn't been scratched into the drywall like the others. It was darker, indented deeper, as if whoever made it had pressed harder than before. I reached out and touched it. The drywall was still warm. I pulled my hand back immediately. I don't scare easily. It's part of the job. You learn to trust what you can verify. But this wasn't something I could explain away with bad measurements or outdated records. I brought a flashlight the next time. The beam revealed details I hadn't noticed before. Some of the tallies overlapped old repair patches. Others cut cleanly through layers of paint. They hadn't all been made at the same time. Some were old, very old, and some were new. At the far end of the room, I noticed something else. A thin, vertical line on the back wall. Not a crack, a seam. I pressed on it gently. Nothing happened. I pressed harder. Still nothing. Then, as I shifted my weight, the knocking started again. This time, it wasn't rhythmic. It was frantic. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and the sound stopped instantly, like it was reacting to me. That was the moment I decided to seal the room. The next morning, I bought plywood, screws, and insulation. I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured out what to do. I removed the door from its hinges. That wasn't easy. The screws were old, stripped, and set deeper than they should have been. It took nearly an hour, and when it finally came free, the door felt heavier than it looked. Too heavy. I stacked insulation inside the opening, then sealed it with plywood, screwing it directly into the studs. When I was done, there was no outline, no seam. The wall looked solid again. For the first time in days, I slept through the night. No tapping, no sounds, no dreams. The relief lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th morning, I found drywall dust on the hallway floor. Just a light scattering of it, like something had been scraped. The wall was intact, but when I pressed my ear against it, I heard breathing. Slow, steady, not mine. I stepped back, heart racing. I told myself it was airflow, pipes, anything. That night, I set up my phone to record audio. I placed it on the floor by the wall and left it there while I slept. In the morning, I listened to the recording. For hours, there was nothing. Then, at 2:41 a.m., the sound began. Scraping, followed by a single knock. Then a voice. Low, muffled, so close it distorted the microphone. It said my name. I moved out 2 days later. But here's the part I haven't told anyone. When I packed my things, I found something in my closet, tucked behind a box I hadn't touched in years. A piece of yellowed paper, a child's drawing of my new apartment, with one extra room drawn in red. If you're still listening, kindly subscribe and put on the bell button. You already know this didn't end when I left the house. It followed me. I moved into the apartment on a Tuesday. That detail matters only because Tuesdays are quiet. No late-night noise, no reason for unfamiliar sounds to blend into the background. The building was a 3-story complex on the north side of Springfield, near a grocery store and a strip mall. Built in the early 2000s, concrete construction, no shared walls on the side I was assigned. Unit 2B. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, no surprises. That's what I needed. For the first 2 nights, nothing happened. No knocking, no tapping, no sounds behind the walls. I slept with the lights off for the first time in weeks. I unpacked slowly. I stopped checking the corners of rooms before entering them. I told myself the drawing was just that, a coincidence, a cruel trick of my own mind connecting unrelated events because I wanted answers where there weren't any. I even threw it away, ripped it into small pieces, and dropped it into the dumpster behind the building. That was my mistake. On the 3rd night, I woke up at 2:41 a.m. Again. The number hit me before the sound did. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. At first, there was nothing. Then came the faintest noise. Not tapping, not knocking, scraping. It was coming from the wall behind my closet. I sat up slowly, my heart already racing. The rational part of my brain was scrambling for explanations, plumbing, airflow, someone in another unit. But the building didn't share walls there. I stepped and crossed the room, placing my ear against the drywall. The sound stopped immediately. I waited. Minutes passed. Then, 1 knock. Just one. I stepped back. The next morning, I contacted the property manager. I didn't mention voices, or drawings, or hidden rooms. I just told her I thought there was an issue with the wall in my unit. She came by that afternoon with a maintenance worker. They knocked on the wall,
listened, looked confused. "Probably settling," the worker said. "Concrete buildings?" I asked. He shrugged. "Sometimes." They left. That night, the scraping returned. Longer this time, more deliberate. I started sleeping with my phone recording again. What it captured wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no clear words, just hours of silence, followed by a low, rhythmic sound, like fingers dragging across drywall, and beneath it, barely audible, breathing. Slow, steady. On the 5th night, I noticed the measurements. I don't know why I checked. Maybe it was habit. Maybe denial was giving way to instinct. I measured the bedroom, then the living room, then the closet. The numbers didn't line up. The apartment was missing space. Not much, just enough. Behind the closet wall. I stood there for a long time, tape measure hanging uselessly at my side. I didn't touch the wall. I didn't need to.